Welcome to another episode of the Federal Newswire's Business of America podcast with your host, Jerry Rogers.
Welcome to another episode of the Business of America. I'm excited about this program, although I say this every week. I'm excited about this program. I am, because we talk to the doers. We talk to the innovators, the advocates, the experts, those who are in the arena of science, of politics, of policy, of business, who are changing things, making things happen. And it's easy to criticize. It's easy to say that's the wrong policy or this business will never succeed. But when you're in the arena, it's different. And so that's what this program does. We bring in men and women who are in the arena. And today, she's with both Independent Women's Forum, the nonprofit C3, and also Independent Women's Voice, which is the C4, and does a little bit more some more political work. But Patrice Onwuka is with us. And I'm excited. I got to go back to why I'm excited, because you had a very good piece in Real Clear Health on hope for housing, women. Now, it's March. It is Women's Awareness Month. Today, we're recording this, I think, on International Women's Day. And so, we just had the State of the Union. So there's lots of things to discuss. But before, I want to welcome you, and maybe we can start, and you could talk about the piece that you did for Real Clear Health.
Absolutely. First off, thank you so much for having me. I always enjoy getting a little bit more of a chance to expound on 700-word op-ed, because there's so much more that is unsaid that can't be written down. And so this piece titled "Let Women Age in Place" really takes a look at how do we provide a hopeful agenda for women when it comes to their retirement security. I think right now women today are stressed out financially even more than men. And very often they say not only are they concerned about affording life right now, but also their retirement. And if they are caregivers, then they're also thinking about their parents and whether their parents will have financial security going into their latter years. And so, I thought, well, what are the ways that we can expand those resources that many women have? And I think as we see the aging baby boomer population, there's going to be a massive wealth transfer for these women who are living longer, probably outliving their spouses if they're married. And that is in their property. But you potentially have at your fingertips, not just appreciating assets, but assets that can be generating income at the moment when you need it, where, especially if you're a woman who is no longer able to stay in the workforce actively.
We talk about all kinds of different issues, and I know that healthcare has been a big topic at the Business of America podcast, and partly because, and we've had guests on from different advocacy groups, Hannah Cox, and we've had Phyllis Arthur from Bio, women, and what's interesting about that is what I keep on hearing over and over again, that not only are there special issues perhaps impacting women differently than men, but women really make a lot of the healthcare decisions. And so therefore, if you are retirement, your home, your financial health, maybe you're a single mother, right? It's, but also you're making these decisions on healthcare. Mm-hmm. How does your work, because I know that you are the Director of Economic Opportunity at IWF, at the Independent Women's Forum. How does your work there kind of impact these choices, these challenges that all Americans face, but in this context that women face?
Well, a lot of the work that I do at Independent Women's Forum, and we're a nonprofit or educational organization. We're really looking for smart, common sense solutions to some of these challenges. And we definitely speak to women, center right, center left women, but women who are looking for something beyond just the headline. And when it comes to women who are, 50 plus, women who are at that age where maybe they've progressed in their career, they're maybe no longer thinking about starting families, but they're thinking about, what the next step is in their career. career, we're trying to think through how can we expand opportunities for them, overcoming some of the challenges that they may face in the workplace. But then also, how are we building, again, that financial security that they face, or how are we ensuring that when it comes to things like healthcare, that they have access that they need when it comes to their ability to take care of themselves or take care of their family members, that they have the resources that they need. And so, we cover a lot of different issues, but, this is an issue when it comes to housing that I've started to get into. I also look at, from the employment side and work side, entrepreneurship and some of the regulatory challenges that a lot of women who, decide, I'm tired of the 9-to-5 rat race. I want to be independent. I want to have flexibility. I want to balance some of those other issues that I'm dealing with. Where is government erecting barriers to women being able to build, to hang their shingle or have those side hustles? And we're seeing some challenges there. So, my work touches on all of these different areas. But through Independent Women's Voice, our sister organization, we really wanted to look at this 50 plus demographic of women who are obviously very active in the political space, obviously have assets and resources, and are thinking that no one is thinking about them. Sometimes we only think about women from a reproductive angle, and at IWF, we don't. All issues are women's issues, but we are looking at this demographic in terms of what are their specific challenges and how can we provide some opportunities or some solutions to those challenges.
You make a very interesting point, because the reproductive health issues, this is provocative.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if our public discussion is that informed. I do think that this is a place where the mainstream, the media, and at least one political party is loud. And last night or this week, when this podcast, reproductive health issues was a big part of the president's State of the Union. I wish. And this is a different program. I would like to have a better, more informed discussion on those issues. But I say that to say this, or ask you this: if you watched the State of the Union, you would think that women only care about reproductive health issues. And frankly, we're seeing small business owners, more and more women. We're seeing that. In terms of household incomes, women-led household incomes, we're seeing that, especially immigrant women, East Asian, from West Africa, they're becoming leaders in the economy, innovators in terms of small business entrepreneurs, startup firms. And it's not just reproductive health, it's a myriad issue. So I'm not sure. I say this, I think it used to be right. The Kauffman Foundation used to talk about how all net new jobs created in the U.S. since the 70s come out of small business and startup firms. So a lot of those firms are women firms. And you mentioned regulations already. So there are federal regulations, there are state regulations, there are local county and city regulations. In your view, broadly, are we moving in the right direction to let that small business owner put her shingle up for her own store, or are we going in the wrong direction?
Broadly, we're going from the economy standpoint, the right direction. From the regulatory government standpoint, the absolute wrong direction. You're right when you say that women are leading business owners. So women-owned businesses make up 39% of all small businesses in this country. And we're talking about 14 million businesses. They tend to be one-woman shops. Most 99 out of 10 of them, are just, they are non-employer firms, meaning that it is just one person. They are a contractor, maybe they're independent. However, they are earning 1099 income. They're not a W-2 employee of anyone else for their business, at least. And so from a regulatory standpoint, we literally have the Biden administration implementing new restrictions on independent contracting. That is going to hit gig workers. That is going to hit freelancers. That is going to hit self-employed Americans, of which there are 70 million of them in this country, and over half of them are women. Why? They're looking for flexibility, and that's what they find when they can create their own schedule, do work, contract work however they want, wherever they want, whenever they want. and the new Department of Labor regulations, which will be enacted on March 11th. So this Monday would institute a new definition for independent contracting that would severely restrict that. We saw a preview of this foreshadowing coming out of California when California implemented its AB5 regulations, and self-employment fell 10.5% according to the Mercatus Center. And so we're expecting that this is going to spread nationally. And that's a lot right now. One of my biggest issues is educating on this issue, as well as bringing some of the women entrepreneurs that we have. These are mothers who raised their families because of flexibility and independent contracting. Now they're worried that this is going to disappear. There are people who have health conditions who simply cannot sit behind a desk in a 9-to-5 job because they have maybe they're survivors of rape or murder. I talked to one woman who was. And so we need to protect flexibility. We need to protect freelance. We need to protect the free, independent workforce in this nation from a lot of these regulatory challenges. State and local level, we see this pop up, and there are lots of other regulations. So that's why I think we need to get back to a place where we let the independent freelancer entrepreneur be that person and let them run far, fast, and wide.
You know, and this is not a partisan issue in so much as a lot of these sole proprietor businesses, you know, one owner or just it's one person, and she's earning the 1099, right? It's 1099,
yes, 1099
earnings. A lot of these women are in cities.
Yeah.
Right. And they're in cities where there is problems with crime, where there are food and healthcare deserts. There are a lot of urban problems. It seems to me that if there are independent women who are looking to make their way and start up their own businesses and their own economic ventures, that we should be doing everything possible. So again, this is not Republican women in the suburbs wants to make. No, this is black and white. This is urban. This is suburban. This is rural. And you're right. I'm glad you mentioned these new regs. What can Congress do? Congress has oversight. Is this Congress? Will the next Congress look at these new rules, how they're implemented? Is there any oversight? Is there any way to modify these moving forward?
Absolutely. The great news is that just this week, Senator Bill Cassidy from Louisiana, ranking member on the Senate Help Committee, introduced a Congressional Review Act to overturn the Department of Labor independent contractor rule. That he paired up with the ranking member of one of the chairman of one of the subcommittees on the Workforce and Education House Committee, Republican Kevin Kiley out of California. So they teamed up to introduce a Congressional Review Act to overturn this Biden rule. At the same time, we're also seeing several legal challenges to the rule coming from the truckers associations, as well as grassroots freelancer groups. So whether it is overturned in the courts or whether it's overturned through Congress, and I think this is enough of a bipartisan issue that you would see Democrats join with Republican allies in overturning this rule. There's so much when people recognize that this is actually an issue, they would say, well, obviously hands off self-employment, hands off entrepreneurship, and especially when you think about the people who are affected, women who need flexibility, older Americans who some of them will say they face ageism in the workplace and they're able to still maintain their livelihoods because of independent contract work, students, people who have health conditions. These are the types of people
parents who want to spend more time at home with their kids and work their own hours. I mean, yes. I went through this, I'm as you can tell, we're in DC, and I did the whole, K Street, the Hill, and I did it for years and years. And my wife and I, we have 5 children. And I realized that I was very seldom home. I was missing important events. And, several years ago, I decided to put out my own shingle. I did this. Now, I do other things now, but having the freedom to do that was very important to my at the time, my very young family and my wife and my marriage. So this is really, again, and this is urban, suburban, it's rural, it's women, it's men. It is those who work with their minds and with their hands. Mm-hmm. This really is a crossover issue.
Oh, yeah.
And it used to be, I'm old enough to remember when Democrats and Republicans worked together. In fact, years ago, I was at the Manhattan Institute.
Okay.
It's a wonderful think tank based in New York. A lot of criminal justice reform, a lot of crime issues and urban issues. And we worked with a guy who was the mayor of Newark, Cory Booker, on a host of issues. Yeah. He's now, of course, he's a Democrat senator from the state of New Jersey. We work closely with Cory Booker. We work closely with Mayor Jerry Brown, former governor of California, on these kind of crossover issues, to lift people out of poverty, on prison reentry, on school choice. There was a time in this country not long ago where Republicans and Democrats worked together on giving options and giving choice to families who are trapped in failed public schools. So my question is, I make a long story long, I apologize. My question to you is, are you optimistic? Are you hopeful? Will we see? It seems to me that the Obama to Trump to Biden, something has broken in terms of working together and cooperation. And I'm not sure if we're going to fix that in the short term, but long term. Do you see a time when we can go back and begin to cross the aisle and work together for common sense? You said this. Common sense solutions so women and families and entrepreneurs can live their best lives.
I do. It's going to be these smaller issues, although independent contracting, 70 million plus people is a pretty big issue. But I think I see that this is an area. In the op-ed that I wrote, also Let Women Age in Place, I talked about reforming the permitting process and allowing people to turn their unused basements into granny flats as a way of, saying, okay, if you have a big house, you have all this space, why not be able to convert some of this space into a unit that someone else can live in? That gets at housing affordability. If we can expand the supply of housing. And I bring this up as an example of a bipartisan solution because California has actually been a leader in reforming some of its zoning and and permitting processes to allow for these additional units to be built or to be recognized, so that if you have a garage or converted cottage in your backyard. These are the kinds of solutions that Republicans and Democrats, conservatives and independents and liberals can actually say, you know what? We've got a lot of goals to hit, whether it's dealing with housing affordability, dealing with homelessness, or dealing with, income generating opportunities for people going into their older years. Here's one solution we can actually agree with works. We've seen it work in a place like California. We could see it work in a red state. I do think that there are small areas and small opportunities to work together. And I'm hopeful that no matter what happens in November, there'll be organizations like Independent Women's Forum and Independent Women's Voice that are looking for those common sense cross the partisan line solutions.
I think you're right. I'm a despairing optimist. Fred Smith was the founder, CEO, president of the Competitive Enterprise Institute.
Yes.
And he was a mentor. I love Fred. And Fred had a newsletter he would write to CEI's supporters and friends and allies, the Despairing Optimist it was called. And so I've stolen that phrase from Fred, where I am hopeful, but I'm hopeful because I have these conversations, because I have the opportunity to meet you and to meet Hannah Cox and to meet Phyllis Arthur and small business entrepreneurs. And so we've had scientists and venture capitalists on this program who are working on rare disease. And so there are so many opportunities. And I think this, and you said something that makes a lot of sense to me. These small issues, these discrete issues, we don't have to get the whole loaf at once. But if we can find one area to work together, like it used to be, I think Ronald Reagan said something like, if you're with me 7 out of 10 times, we could work together. Forget 7 out of 10. I'll work with you on one issue if it means getting something done. So in the areas that you work on, where do you see the potential for breakthrough or potential for reform? Is it in housing? Is it in pensions? Is it where is it? Or maybe it's a couple, or maybe you're less optimistic than me.
I'm an eternal optimist like you. Another area that I think we're seeing bipartisan breakthrough, and this is when it comes to workforce development, really, it is in removing degree requirements for jobs. What we've seen since probably the pandemic, the Great Recession and even before, is that so many middle skill jobs require a 4-year degree when previously they did not. The substance of the job does not require it. And you're talking about everything that are from white collar to blue collar positions, millions of them. But because they now require a degree, you have millions of people who are locked out of those opportunities. And when you look at the workforce, more Americans do not have a 4-year degree than do. And so red states and blue states, but really kicking off in Maryland, which is a blue state under former Governor Larry Hogan,
who's now running for Senate. He's now running for Senate in Maryland, and the polling shows that he's going to make Maryland might become a purple state. Who knows? We'll see.
I welcome it. But I do think this is an area where you're seeing Colorado, New Jersey, I believe it was, other states start to say, you know what, Maryland has a good idea. Let's remove the 4-year degree requirement for most of the state jobs, because frankly, most of the state jobs do not need it. And so it's not just creating those state opportunities, but it's sending a signal to the private sector businesses. Hey, you need to look at your jobs as well and say, do we really need a 4-year degree for this position? When you take a skills-based and experience-based approach, then suddenly your pool of applicants opens up. You're creating opportunities for people who are who are near your workplaces, people who are in your communities, and now you're getting the benefit of not having to deal with a tight jobs market where maybe there are not as many applicants as there were before, and you're getting qualified individuals who simply just don't have that pigskin.
And you can train them in an apprenticeship program or some kind of in-house training where someone who might have gone to college or university or even advanced degrees, they might have learned a lot, but they learned it wrong from how you want it in your business. So this flexibility, I think, makes perfect sense. And I agree. We're learning this a little bit post-COVID also, where a lot of young people who are now 24, 25, their college experience was interrupted. And so therefore, some of them were forced off campus. They were forced to take classes online. So they dropped out and they went and got a job. And I know of several, you and I work in public policy. We work with words and ideas and policies, that sort of thing. I am meeting more people, younger people, who are research assistants, who are editors and writers, especially in public affairs firms and some of the think tanks even, where they don't have they did 3 years and they're going back and they're trying to get their degree, but in the meantime they're getting this valuable experience at a think tank, at a policy group, at a public affairs firm. And I do think I have at Real Clear Politics and Real Clear Policy, I know a lot of people who can write and edit and are wonderful with words and don't have that 4-year degree. So I agree with you. This is something that this is a little fix. That can have a big impact.
Yes. I think you see opportunities like that. Also in the workspace, you have occupational licenses. That's a perennial conservative issue where, whether you are, I always go to hair braiding, but you could be an HVAC technician, some of the health fields, some of the education fields. I mean, yoga instructors and dog walkers in New York City, you should not need to be certified by the local government to do these things.
I know we kid around a lot. I'm from New York originally. In New York, the bagel shops and the delis and the pizza places. And one thing about North Jersey and New York is bacon, Taylor ham, egg sandwiches, right? And they don't do them well in the DC, the DMV. They don't do them well. Because a lot of these shops here in the DMV, they microwave the eggs. And so I asked an owner of one of these delis once. It's by me, where I live, outside of the D.C. area. They own. It's called New York Bagels, whatever the name of the shop is. And I ordered a sandwich, and it was horrible because they microwave it. So I said, "Why do you microwave it? Just put a grill out, a tabletop grill or whatever." And she said she can't because on Sundays she has 10 people working, because of the bakery and the bagels. And if they wanted to cook on a stovetop or a griddle, they would have to go and get permits for every single worker. And it was price prohibitive. So therefore they microwave the food. So maybe we'll get better sandwiches if we get rid of some of these permitting and licensing. It's amazing to me how brilliant people can be. By just being, by just doing. Yes. And the government comes in, unfortunately, and stifles that. So here, I'm going to ask this question, and I'm we're winding down, but how do we frame this so we can not only see success in these businesses, but start seeing some political success? How do we frame the issue? I think those on the entrepreneurial side of things, they're very good at creating. I think they're less good at politicking. So how do we get better at the politicking or the engaging our legislators and our government officials to get this reform, to get these changes? That's big. I mean, and I ask this because I don't have the answer. And but I think we at least have to think out loud. So I'm asking you to think out loud. What are some things that we could do to frame these issues differently?
Well, first off, we take out the wonky jargon.
Yes. I wish I had a bell, because every time you say something smart, I'd be bringing the bell. Yes, I know. We're very wonky, aren't we?
We are. Occupational licensing reform. Your eyes probably glaze over. All I need to say is a license to do nails or a license to cut hair. Do you really need it? And is the education or the schooling that you had to go through to get it, do you actually even utilize that anymore? And suddenly people say, yeah, you probably don't need to. But how do we get people engaged? First off, they just need to know what's happening. And then number one, let them know what's happening. But number two, explain it in a very simple, very basic terms. You shouldn't have to do this. You shouldn't have to get permission just to do this. Or this is a really good common sense idea. What do you think? And then number three, we ask to share their stories. So I'm giving you kind of what we do at IWF.
Again, I need the bell. I'm gonna have a bell on the program from now on, and I'm gonna call it the Patrice bell, because I need to. Every time there's a good idea, I need to ring a bell. But you're right. So say number three again. I apologize.
Share your story.
Yes.
We collect so many stories from people who are harmed by policies that may be well-meaning, well-intentioned, but have unintended consequences. And so whether it's the cancer survivor who beat breast cancer 3 times, living in California, raised her 3 kids because she was an independent contractor. Now her business is teetering on the verge of collapse because of California restrictions. So we go out and we find these people. We ask them to share their stories with us. We publicize the stories. Hey, we even bring them to Capitol Hill and have meetings with members of Congress or their state houses. Ask them to testify during their state houses. And I will tell you, nothing can negate an argument better than a personal story. I can give you stats up to your eyeballs, but when I bring someone who looks you in their eyes and in the eyes and says, this is how it harmed me, or this is what this means to me, then no amount of stats can even or challenges can really undercut that. And so we have people share their stories. And hey, if you want to contact your member, we've got ways for you to do that too. But sometimes it's just education, breaking it down simply, having you share your story. Those are really
making the complex conversational,
yes.
which you've done. And I know IWF and IWV, they do this. And then sharing your story. So for those of our viewers who go to church, it's your personal witness.
It is.
No one can ever, no one can ever take that away from you, right? You have to have a witness, right? In Sunday school growing up, I was told by our preachers and our Sunday school teachers that you have to be able to give a witness because no one can take that away. You can talk all theology, but you got to give them the personal story. I think you're right. And again, this is Malcolm Gladwell said that, to have a big impact, you have to do little things right. And I think IWF, IWV, I think, Patrice, what you're doing all these little things right. And I am more hopeful after this conversation. I think we can make a big difference. I think these little changes and reforms and stories can have a big impact on people's lives. And so, Patrice Onwuka,
yes.
How can people find more about your work, about IWF, the Independent Women's Forum, IWV, the Independent Women's Voice? Where should they go? Give us, shout out your website, shout out what you're up to before we say goodbye.
All right, go to iwf.org to read some of our policies and simple stuff, easily broken down, very digestible. Go to iwv.org if you want to take some actions. We've got action alerts around this independent contracting issue. And if you like to learn more about these policies or my quick takes on economic news, follow me at x.com, no longer Twitter, at Patrice Pink File. Patrice Pink File. I know, very strange, but Patrice Pink File. And that's where you get my immediate reactions and interesting stuff that I'm doing, as well as a couple of family pictures and coordinated color outfits from time to time, too.
Well, you're fantastic. And I love your piece at Real Clear is important. This conversation, it's a short conversation, but I think hopefully those who are watching, who are interested in politics and policy in the business world and how to change your neighborhood and how to change policy and make things better, make communities better. I think this was a good program for that. Well, I think we offered up some ways to think about that. Share your story. Share your story. All right. So thank you so much. God bless you. I hope you come back. I hope your colleagues at IWF and IWV come on the program.
Terrific. Well, I'd love to come back anytime, and I'll definitely send them your way.
All right. Well, that's another episode of The Business of America, and it was one of our best shows. And look for more shows. Look for this show. Thank you. Rogers out.
This has been the Federal Newswire's Business of America podcast, hosted by Jerry Rogers. Check out the Federal Newswire's family of websites, as well as their social media stream